two readings today. One will just be part of the sermon. It's like to have a secular reading and a sacred reading. Some of you may have heard this. The newsletter editor of the First Parish of Wayland, Massachusetts, recently ran her favorite New Yorker squib. I don't know how long ago that was. Important notice. If you are one of the hundreds of parachuting enthusiasts who bought our Easy Skydiving book, please make the following correction. On page 8, line 7, the words state zip code should have read pull rip cord. That was actually an advertisement in the Warrenton, Virginia Fauquier Democrat. Jane Rosepka writes, I worry about things like this during the Christmas season. Had I been a parachuting enthusiast and had I breezed through easy skydiving during the month of December, I'd still be flying through the air, picking up speed, shouting my zip code. Zip codes are important. Or excuse me, zip codes aren't important. Ripcords are. During the Advent season, it's all too easy to confuse one for the other. The zip codes of the season, the replacement bulbs, the 4 sticks of butter, the fruit by mail catalogs, the party shoes, have our attention. And before we know it, we're picking up speed and shouting out those zip codes without ever asking why. Perhaps we should look to our ripcords. Our lifelines in December, as always, are our inner quiet, the love we exchange, and our efforts to make the world more whole. We can slow the descent, we can take in the view, and we can anticipate a gentle landing on the 25th. Advent is a time for preparation. That has a lot to do with the purple. In the traditional church, Advent and Lent, the robes, or not the robes, but stoles and paraments and things like that will be purple as the color of preparation. There are other colors too, but that's what it's all about. And today I think we need to think about preparing for our celebration of the birth of the Prince of Peace, as he was so known. Because God knows we need peace. We need it in our world. I just had to talk to my students last week about, well, we've been talking about all our efforts in the Middle East, and I think we've just seen them all squandered in one proclamation, and people will die. We certainly need peace in the nation with all the disruption we hear, and even locally. Even in joyous holidays, we need peace. Think of the important notice, the things that distract us from what's really important. A member of a congregation long ago told me that she thought we needed another holiday, probably about this time of year, that she would call National Pajama Day. When you just never got out of your pajamas. You're not allowed to go anywhere, work, shop, have any big meals, nothing. What that is a sabbatical, a day of real Sabbath, and God knows we need those. Some more than others, because I know you work too hard. In Scripture, sort of understanding of peace and how things are going change over time. In the early part of the Old Testament, or the First Testament, or the Hebrew Scriptures, the Deuteronomists had it pretty simple. Bad things happen to bad people. Good things happen to good people. Isn't that simple? Doesn't that make it all easy? If things are going bad for you, well, what did you do to deserve it? Because it must be your fault. It doesn't take long for people to realize that it must be your fault. It's no way to understand the world. It's far, far different from what we would consider perhaps God's mercy. Where's that? There's no room for that in Deuteronomistic theology. So by the time you get to the prophets, it's changing. Jonah, among others, and even this shows up in the old writing, says at one point, "For I knew that you were a gracious God and merciful, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love. That sounds a little better. And today's lectionary reading, which people will be reading all over, well, if they do the Old Testament, some people just skip that. It's Isaiah 40, verses 1 through 11. So it's got some length to it. Actually, I'm going to skip a big chunk of it. I'm going to do 1 through 5, and then come down and pick it up somewhere else. Comfort, oh comfort my people, says your God. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem and cry to her, for she has served her term and her penalty is paid, and she has received from the Lord's hand double for all her sins. A voice cries out, in the wilderness prepare the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Every valley shall be lifted up, and every mountain and hill made low, and the uneven ground shall become level, and the rough places a plain. Then the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all the people shall see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. Go high up to a mountain, O Zion, herald of good tidings. Lift up your voice with strength, O Jerusalem, herald of good tidings. Lift it up, do not fear. Say to the cities of Judah, here is your God. See, our Lord God comes with his might, and with his arm rules for him. His reward is with him, and his recompense before him. He will feed his sheep like a flock, like a shepherd. He will gather the lambs in his arms, and carry them in his bosom, and gently lead the mother sheep. Comfort, oh comfort my people, is the message that's being given. You've paid the price already. You don't need to pay anymore. It gets down to verse 4. I don't think he's talking about cut and fill construction here. We're not going to tear down all the mountains and fill up all the valleys. Basically what it's saying is things will be made smooth and made easy. I won't have to, this morning I had to worry about black ice maybe on the roads, or things are slick or dangerous. No, it'll be made level and easy. And then in verse 10, we are assured that all will be held accountable. And we like that, except for ourselves, of course. But the idea that everyone should be held accountable for good and ill. And that last verse is the crux of the matter. He will feed his flock. The sheep will be fed. The people will be nourished. The little lambs will be gathered together and carried. And the mothers will be gently led. That's pretty peaceful. The divine desire for us to be at peace. Or as Hosea Blue used to like to say, take care of our happiness and holiness. He saw them as the same thing. Faith, I believe, is a path to peace. Now, faith is not the same thing as beliefs, although in practice we tend to use these two words interchangeably. A belief is a mere acceptance of a propositional statement. The sky is blue, okay, I'll accept that. That's a belief. Faith is different, and there's a couple of different ways we can look at faith. One way is kind of the ultimate. What's the last place we go to when things aren't going well? Everybody has faith in something. It's a good idea to know what that is beforehand. I know people have faith in science, faith in sex, faith in money, faith in power, faith in all kinds of things. It's when everything else fails, what's the last place you turn to? That is what you have faith in. More traditionally, it's essentially dependence on God in the tradition. But faith is not just an idea. Faith is experiential. It's something you live. It's a way of life. Faith is also confidence in the mystery of the grace. There's grace out there. It's a mystery. I have faith in it and believe in it. In liberal theology, also identifies faith with trust. That's an important part of it. In liberal theology, we've seen faith being combined with acceptance of that gift of grace, with individual will, with moral reason, and with knowledge. That's all part of liberal theology. But they'll go further on and say faith must be understood as that to which something else must be added. And the something else, of course, is works. As the writer of the Epistle of James said, faith without works is dead. Faith by itself won't do anything. It needs to have something added to it. A lot of us have heard about thoughts and prayers. They're good, but they also need works. They need to be active. But still, as John Calvin said, and make note of this, you may never hear me quote John Calvin again. It is a steady and certain knowledge of the divine benevolence towards us. So, how do we get peace? I think faith is a great path to get there. And when we go back and you get me up here, I'm going to start talking about Scripture. If you look at our traditional Scriptures, and there are our traditional Scriptures, we see two different words. In the First Testament, the word for peace is shalom. And in the Second Testament, it's eirene. The eirene is really kind of inadequate in a lot of ways. In Greek literature, they use this word peace, eirene, as opposed to war. But there's more to it than that, and even in the original Greek they knew that, because it meant being in a state of rest. When you're at peace, you're at a state of rest, like National Pajama Day, when you can take it easy. But now shalom, that's different. It is emphatically social. It means well-being, but there's a whole lot more to that. The writer Dana Wilbanks has expounded on this, and he said he found a fivefold meaning in Scripture. So we'll go back over this. I'm just going to read the five. He writes that peace is, the biblical vision of peace is eschatological. We'll come back to that. The biblical vision of peace includes justice as integral to its meaning. The biblical view of peace encompasses both individuals and communities. The biblical vision of peace sees the realization of peace as both divine gift and human task. And fifthly, the biblical vision of peace requires both witnesses and agents. Now the eschatological, I expect you to know that, it's just the end times. So that's one way of understanding it. I want to look more at the others. Justice as integral to its meaning. Now, when we talk about justice, I think we all know, we're not talking about something like criminal justice. We're talking about equity, fairness. Everybody has enough. When the world is like that, then it's a just world, and then we are at peace. It encompasses both individuals and communities. Peace is not going to something that's going to come to the rugged individualist that's all about them and their life, and they do it all and don't worry about other people. You have to be communal as well. It sees the realization of peace as both divine gift and human task. So it's not something we can just sort of sit around and hope for. We have to be active in our search. We have to be engaged in it. It's works. It's going out and doing the work of peace, doing the work of justice. That's what makes it real and whole. And it requires both witnesses and agents. Agents, doers, people that go out and do it, and do the act of peace. And you need witnesses too. People have to bear witness to what's going on. And in the old language, kind of testify to it. This is what I see. This is what it looks like. This is what I want. This is what I'm calling for. This is what peace is. And there's good news and bad news about this. The good news is, I think personally and communally, shalom may be realized. It's possible to have it, to feel that deep peace in ourselves, and to be in a community that lives in peace. It is possible. The bad news is socially and politically probably not. We're probably not going to ever have a society that's going to be at peace. We will probably never have political systems that are totally at peace. But there's always a but. My students, like my former parishioners, are kind of used to that. But it's still our job to live in peace and to work for peace. It's part of the human project. You want to be a human being, these are the requirements. This is one of the things you just have to do. It's like those questions. Do you remember right before you were born? You're standing in line waiting to be born. And you know, you got to fill out the forms. And they come and ask you, what species do you want to be? And you say human, and they handed you a contract. If you don't remember that at all, you probably don't remember the fine print. As a human being, you must spend your entire life attempting to find out the answers to the following questions. Where did I come from? Where did I go? It has nothing to do with Cotton Eye Joe. Is there a God? What's the meaning of life? It's part of the human project. Will we ever find the answers? I don't think so. Does that matter? No. But to be human is to search for those answers. To be human is to be part of a community and to work for justice and equity in that community so that it may be at peace, at rest. Everybody has enough. That's what it is. And while I want to say, we're a covenantal people, and basically what I've just said is our half of the covenant. It's what we're supposed to do as a community. And yet, these are times that try men's souls. But it could be worse. I mean, we're not dealing with Voldemort or Sauron here, are we? I like to quote sometimes to my students and to other people. One of the most pointed sayings of one of the great spiritual leaders of our day, Albus Dumbledore, who, when they realized that Voldemort was alive in the world, talking to this young boy that's going to have to deal with him eventually, says, these are hard times, Harry. These are the kind of times when you have to make a choice between doing what is right and doing what is easy. That's a big difference there. Choosing between what's right and what's easy. I didn't say wrong. And then, I don't normally do requests, but a friend and colleague of mine said, you need to read this tomorrow as part of your sermon. And it fits in. It's from Tolkien, I think indirectly. Looking at it and consulting my reference library, the trilogy, I can't find this speech. But when you take 3 books and try to make movies out of them, you have to conflate a lot of stuff. And I think this is a conflation to trying to get to the essence of it. Sam and Frodo were a couple of hobbits. They're just Joe and John and Doe, just little guys. And they go off on a quest that if they don't succeed, the world will basically end and all will be evil. And it's just way past what they think they can do. Frodo bears the great burden. Sam is his companion. And at one point, Frodo says, "I can't do this, Sam." And Sam says, "I know. It's all wrong. By rights, we shouldn't even be here. But we are. It's like the great stories, Mr. Frodo. The ones that really mattered. Full of darkness and danger they were. And sometimes you didn't want to know the end. Because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come. And when the sun shines, it will shine out the cleaner and clearer. Those were the stories that stayed with you, that meant something. Even if you were too small to understand why. But I think, Mr. Frodo, I understand. I know now. Folks in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't. Because they were holding on to something. Frodo says, what were they holding on to, Sam? That there's something good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for. We are in our own stories. And in Advent and Christmas, we try to remember another story, an old story from a couple thousand years ago. Of an unwed, probably, Palestinian teenager. And in the story, she's married and has an older husband. And they're poor, and they have a little kid. And the child is the Prince of Peace. To give us an example of how our lives are led. That's why, to me, as a Unitarian Universalist, I'm different from my Christian brethren and sisters. For them, the most important holiday is Easter. And I understand that. For me, it's Christmas as a religious holiday, as the coming of hope into the world, and the joy, and that we can actually do something in this world, even though we're just people. But we're people. And if we are just people, it will go well. How can we continue? Well, I think by having faith. With faith strengthening us to do good works, we both may bring peace and find peace. And to paraphrase Philippians, which also I rarely do, let your gentleness be known to everyone, and may you find the peace that passes understanding.